so that that is being recorded. And make sure I share the correct screen. And I need to get this out of the way. There we go. Are you able to see my screen okay? Okay, perfect. I'm going to minimize the images of everyone so you can have a full view of the screen. Renee, Heidi, and Matt will monitor the chat, so that way if you do have any questions, go ahead and post them. But also feel free to take yourself off of mute and stop me at any time if you have a question. And I'm on my third cup of coffee this morning, so also stop me if I start going too fast. Sometimes I have a tendency to speak quickly, especially if I've had a bit of coffee. And it looks like there are 2 more people that entered the waiting room. Let me get them admitted here real quick.
Yeah, sometimes people have glitchy internet and it'll drop their connection and they have to come back in.
Okay, and if you being the presenter on this, if you see that pop up while I'm demoing, feel free to please let people get back in. So right now, this is basically the dashboard, the home screen that you'll land on once you log in. Now, what we're looking at from these boxes, each box is considered a widget, and you do have the ability to customize this screen for yourself. So you'll see over here next to the Getting Started button, you've got a refresh your screen option. You've got another help function, which will take you into kind of like an FAQ type display where you can look for frequently asked questions and the responses, as well as some other supports. But for the customization side of the widgets, you'll see here the little center ellipsis here. When you click on that, it allows you to turn on or off widgets that you want or don't want on your dashboard. So these are the options that are available currently. As we update and create new widgets, you'll receive posting and alerts as you log in that there's a new option available for you. And then there'll be step-by-step instructions how to activate or utilize those tools. And that step-by-step instruction is going to come through this tab here. Now, sometimes on these share screens, the side kind of gets cut off, so you may not be able to see this actual tab that's here that I'm displaying. But it's a little tab that says Walk Me Through. So this is going to be on every screen that you go through within the platform. And this is a support tool that as you are going through the system and you kind of forgot how to do something, you can click on the Walk Me Through, and then you can actually do like a syntax search, and it'll take you to the Walk Me Through that's in there for the function that you're looking for. But with regards to Itematica, the supplemental materials section, this is where the support is for all the functions that you could do or would do within the system for working through Itematica. So you've got the create a test option, create a quick answer key, assign an assessment. So after you've created those tests, and you want to release them, this takes you through the process of how do I assign that. If you are wanting to curate your own content and author questions, then this is going to give you the step-by-step details for how do I go in and create my own items. And then creating resources is where if you have various support tools such as rubrics, graphic organizers, various articles, text, PowerPoint, or other multimedia links in videos or audio files that you want to include with something that you push out, then the resource section is where you can grab and upload and centralize those within the system, and so that those could be included or embedded within the assignments that you're pushing out. And then creating content collections. So the content collection is where you're creating shareable folders. We got someone waiting in the lobby here again. Let me make sure we get them in. So those are the shareable folders that if, say at the central office, you create a test and then you want the various campuses or each coach to have access to that, then that's where you create a collection. You can also create private collections for each of your own campuses where you're utilizing, creating assessments that you're using just to share out at your own campus. But those content collections is where you would do that. So all of those functions as to how to do each of these steps is right here. So I'm going to click on the create a test option, and you'll see here it's saying, okay, test creation, are you ready to create your own tests? And hit start. And then you'll notice it's telling me I need to click here. So you see the click assessments button, and it's under this section. Everything related to Itematica is going to be under the assessment section of the platform. The content collections are housed under the curriculum tab. So the only time that you guys will need to worry about the curriculum side, unless you are utilizing the online ThinkUp materials, would be to simply work within your content collections, and your shareable folders is there. So you'll see it says click assessment. So I click on that, gives me my drop down, and then it tells me that I need to click the test manager because I'm going to build a test. And since I'm creating one from scratch, it's going to ask me to create a new test. But while we're on this window, you will notice that there are other functions. So for like finding a test. So if you don't remember what content collection you saved a test down into, you know, or you forgot to save it into a collection, but you know you created it, you can go into the finding an existing test. And then what that will do is allow you to search for it by name, by keywords, however it is that you tagged it when you saved it down, and it'll allow you to pull that up and then release it or drop it into a content collection. You'll see
Even when they save it, where is it going to save it to? If, like when you create a new test, or am I jumping ahead?
Well, you kind of
save it to their.
You're kind of jumping ahead, but what it will do is it'll save it in the item bank. So in other words, if you had created a test as a 4th grade English language arts reading assignment, then you would go back and find it in that place. It'll be stored there. But we'll get to that in a little bit more depth as we go through the system here. I need to disconnect from someone trying to reach me. So you'll notice that this will take me through creating the test step by step. You know, so in other words, it's kind of like using Itematica for Dummies, because each time I click on it, it's then going to tell me what I need to do next, right? I need to name my test. And then if I click next, then it's going to take me to select your content area. But I don't need to go that deep yet, because I want to highlight a few other things before we really go into the curating of content. But also at any time that you want to stop, like you forgot how to get somewhere, but then you did the walk me and now you remember how to go, you can just exit out of walk me at any time by just clicking the little X function, and then the tab will just open back up over here, and you can jump back into walk me anytime. One thing just to highlight, you'll notice that a new tab opened up within the platform. So the platform does function a lot like an internet browser. So as you open up new sections, it'll create tabs. And that way you can go back and forth between these tabs just like you would on an internet browser, so that if while you're in the middle of creating a test, you need to do something else, you can just simply stop what you're doing, jump to the other tab, complete that other project or task, and then come back in, and it'll just take you right where you left off. So it does store and save everything while you're working and building that content. But I'm going to X out of this tab because we'll come back into this in a moment. So from a support standpoint, you've got the walk me, which is brilliant, but you may be in there and find that there's something missing, that, you know, that maybe a walk me hasn't been created yet. So one of the things you have is also this support tab here at the top. When you click on that, it gives you a variety of options here. So you've got, if you need to change a student's password, if you need to change your own password, you know, you can go in here, rostering of your students is where you can also go in and grab the complete list of passwords for students and update and change. But right now, from a support standpoint, you also have the support portal, which I'm going to go into here in a second and highlight for you. So this is where we have a lot of other tools to help you navigate and utilize the system. But the submit ticket, this is where if there is something that's going wrong with your platform, you know, something that might be a system bug, or you see that there's something missing from a section that was once there and is not there now, you know, just to highlight a couple of examples, you can submit a ticket. This goes directly into our technology department, where then they would open a ticket and say, okay, this is identified as an existing bug. We're going to get this updated and put it into our next release or refresh of the system. Or they'll look at it and say, okay, it's not a bug with the system, or maybe something wrong with your login ID, and they just have to go in and work with you to get it corrected. But that's what the submitting a ticket is for, is any type of a problem with your access or functionality of the system. And then we also have this submit feedback section. So this is where if you're having some issues and you just want to make sure we're aware of it, but it's not really a ticket issue, you can give us that feedback. It could also be that you just are really pleased with it and want to give us positive feedback. But any feedback is good because it helps us to improve how we operate and function as a company. But I'm going to jump into the support portal. And what this is going to do is just take me to a site, internet site that we have set up. The only way to access this site is through the platform, but it's always there in the support section. And you'll see here that we've got a variety of buttons that you can click on as to, how do I work with and navigate. So again, everything that's related to Itematica, unless it's a content collection, is under assessments. If it's content collection stuff, you would go under the curriculum. Performance is where for building reports and the reporting and analytics side of things. Not sure how much you guys intend to use that, because I'm sure you have a data analytics platform and gradebooks and so forth, but anything that is being administered through the platform and Itematica does allow you to report and do analytics within the platform. And then if you have an issue where you need to do something to correct a roster or group some students together of that nature, you can go under the roster section. And again, those are also in the Walk Me, where you can get those click-throughs. These are basically going to be written out steps with screen capture Giphy images that kind of show how to go through the steps. So like if I need to go in and create a test like the option I was showing you in the Walk Me Through, then it gives you kind of the written out pros on how to do it, and then it shows you the images of the screens of where you're going to go to complete that content. And so this is always going to be available to you within the platform. I'm going to close out of that tab. And again, you access that through the support section here, or you can go into the Walk Me section to the supplemental, right? You just scroll down to supplemental materials, and then that's where you get into a lot of that direct click-through help. There is a Contact Us feature right here in the Walk Me. There's also that Contact Us on the support portal. And then you can also submit a ticket through the Walk Me section here as well. So you've got two places to access that, your support window or the Walk Me Through. I'm going to pause there to see if there are any questions that are popping up inside the chat, or if anyone wants to come off mute and pose a question.
I'm going to jump in real quick and talk to the coaches about this. So we will, guys, we will use this to create like district level assessments. West Campus and South Stand, you may use it also to create campus level assessments. This test bank is for the use of the coaches and the district level. The teachers still have access to the test banks that are in Eduphoria. But one of the reasons that we purchased this is because not only is it way, way easier to create a test in this, and you're going to see that, and the bank is amazing, you're also going to learn that kids are able to test on this platform virtually. And it is much like the environment that they would experience if they were taking STAR online. So for a lot of different reasons we did this, but we will use their data analytics when kids test on this platform.
Fantastic. Thank you for that ad. And so it's going to be, I guess, up to you, Amy, or each coach as to whether or not they want to allow a teacher to have access to anything within. We can restrict teachers' access, right, as to what they can or cannot do. But if you want to give them visibility to any of the data for them to have for their own analytics and for PLC conversations, we can set that up as well. So, but we'll deal with that as you guys go further along. Okay, so one of the things that you'll see here in the center box is needs grading. So this is a new widget that we actually just added. And Amy, you didn't see this one in the previous demos that we did. But one of the things this is for is if you've got tests that you've pushed out and you've got open items that like essay items or open response in math and science that the system can't grade, the teacher's going to need to go in or the coach is going to need to go in and do the grading. And this might be an option for you to open up for teachers so that they're keeping their classes current so it doesn't all fall onto the instructional coach. But it highlights and identifies that there are assignments out there waiting to be graded. And as you hover over, it shows you which students that you have in that pending bracket. And then you have two options available to you for grading assignments. The check mark here just opens up and allows you to go through all of the assignments to go through the grading process. So each time you complete grading one assignment and you exit out, it takes you right back to this screen so that you can go to the next test. This option over here is grading the assignment within the student tracking, which means after you grade it, it's going to take you right back. It's going to take you into the student gradebook view where you could go in and then select a new test, but you'd have to come back here to identify which ones are you looking for that still have items that need to be graded. But
hey, Stephen, there's sorry, did you want to finish that thought? I thought I caught you in between. Go ahead.
No, you're good. Go ahead and post it.
Okay, there's a question asking about how this might share information with Skyward.
Yes, so this does link up to your student information systems. So if Skyward is what you're using for rostering, we are set up through Skyward to have that done. So as your nightly refresh happens with Skyward, this platform will update with that as well. Was that the point of the question, though, for the sync up for SI or student information system, or was there a different question, like if you're using it for grade booking?
They're kind of jumping ahead. They have questions about the way that they'll see the data, like if we'll be by class period, if we'll be able to filter, you know, things like that. So I'm sure you're probably going to talk to us about that part later. Am I right?
Yeah, definitely going to go into data. But what I like to do too, though, is because we can go through this, you know, very organically based on, you know, what you guys are wanting to see, because we'll hit upon everything during the block of time that we have. So since data is something that's important, then yes, let me show you some of the out-of-the-box reports that are readily available for all assignments. And then you do have the ability to go in and build your own customized reports under the performance section. So if you don't see a report in what I highlight for you from a teacher, from a campus admin or central admin level, then you can work with our tech team and put in a request for, hey, how do I go about building a report that shows X, Y, and Z? And then we can take you through how to build that report within the performance section. But if you're looking at it from yourself as a campus coach and you want to take a look at the data, you have two options. One is we've got this quick launch dashboard favorited under your reports, and that's what, if you know, with this widget, you're always going to want to make sure is active and is usually defaulted into your account. And this is where we push out this preformed reporting analytics system, and this is more of an admin level, not a teacher level. The teacher would access their reporting basically through their class or their sections. So they would click on their class, and I'm going to start with the teacher level so you can kind of see what type of data they could look at to help them as they plan for instruction in between your assessment periods, your benchmarks. So when I clicked on that, this basically took me into the platform student tracker or grade book that we have. Across the top here, each of these are the assignments that have been assigned and released for students. So I've just got a bunch up here because of demoing purposes and things of that nature. The teacher will only see anything that you released and pushed out as a benchmark assessment or an EOC. And then this is where they could come in and click on that assignment. And then you'll see here, they have the ability to look at these two report sections. Reteach Enrich is a great report that's very beneficial because especially if that campus is also using ThinkUp and went with ThinkUp Online, then what it'll do is allow them to link back to additional content for interventions and resources. The one-touch reports is basically the general out-of-the-box report that they get with Itematica. So I'm going to launch into that. It takes a little second to load because we've got it preloaded with a bunch of data, you know, for showing purposes. And then, of course, we're on my slow Wi-Fi connection here at home. Excuse me. You see at the bottom on the tabs here of my screen, right now it's defaulting and opening up to the item analysis of that particular assessment that was released. But you'll see here learning standards, performance analysis, as well as student score listing. So let's start with the item analysis that it defaulted to. We'll close out my little control section here. So one of the things you like here is the use of color so that you have a quick at-a-glance view of, okay, green, those are the responses that they got correct. Red, these are the responses that the students chose the incorrect response. You'll see you've got your students listed across the top. You've got their raw score, the percentage, and then over here in this column, this is taking a look at across that class, what percentage of students got this item correct, and then you can see that across the board with the green. And then where do we have our big trouble spots? And then what's really nice is that test that you released in the item analysis brings in the actual item card that for the item that was created within the test. So in this here, we've got 20% of the students incorrect. I can open on that item card. It's going to open up a new tab in the browser for me. And it's going to give me the details behind the TEAC that was associated with that item, what level of depth of knowledge or Bloom's taxonomy was associated. In this one, there was no Bloom's, but depth of knowledge level 2. And then as I scrolled through the item, this is an ELA example. It's going to take the text that was associated with that question, and then it's going to give you the question and the answer choices, underlining which one was the correct response. And this way, it's really good in those PLC conversations and planning for, okay, what might have been the misconception or error that the student made as to why they selected this choice. And then, of course, having looked across the entire class, the majority of the students got it wrong. So obviously, this is something I need to reteach to the majority of the class. So it really helps you plan for spiraled review, intervention, and to conduct enrichment activities. The Learning Standards tab, this is basically looking at standards mastery. You know, where are they against proficiency for mastery of that particular skill? So it's taking each TEAC that was associated with that assignment and then breaking down as to where they are. So again, it lets you kind of zero in on the specific student expectations from the TEACs that need to be readdressed. The student score listing is basically just their performance overall on the test. Lets you know where they're meeting, approaching, exceeding expectations, gives you some great graphic representations for at-a-glance view as to how they're performing on those assignments. So the teacher is looking at this from a assignment per assignment basis, but within the platform itself, and I want to get this thing out of my way where I can view, because it's not letting me navigate. Oh, someone got knocked out. Let me admit someone. Get you back in. Okay. Another person needs to be admitted.
We don't know what it is. We could guess, but we don't know for sure.
What is that? Okay. So I went ahead and just exited out of the one-touch reports. Those are things that are readily available for the teacher. And then the reteach enrich piece, this is designed to basically take a look at how they're performing against the item that was released for them. It'll group students together across the top based on those performance bands, which would then allow you to group students for differentiated instruction. But then down below here, what it's going to do is take each of those items and group the students together based off of who answered that item correctly or incorrectly, which will allow you then to look at moving into a next step. So the next step function is then going to offer up any type of content or resources that you might have available for intervention or enrichment activities. So over here under the My Resources, and we'll go into detail on this when we go back into the platform and talk about uploading your own content. But this is going to be any resource that you've loaded into the platform and tagged to that specific TEAC. And then you've also identified it as something that's more for intervention or something that's more for extension or enrichment. That way, the teacher, if they're going in and looking at this report, could go in and access that content to start working with the students that either need that extension or need that intervention. So these are things that are built into and within the platform. The close out of the reteach enrich. And then I'm back into basically my assignment manager. Now, this is something that would be a benefit for each coach as you're releasing assignments out to your campus, or for as a central admin, what you're pushing out, and you maybe want to go back in and correct something. The box that we're in is also the assignment manager. We'll get someone else admitted that dropped out. The assignment manager. So that way, if you need to go in and edit the test that you released, you can click in and open up that assignment and make changes, as well as where you could go in and unsubmit the assignment for a student who did poorly, and you want to go back in and do a reteach and then let them take the assignment over again so that they can see if they can get a better grade. And one of the things you are able to do when you unsubmit it and re-release it is you can reorder the response items and the questions. So that way, yes, it's the same test, and they're going to be taking it again in close proximity, but it's not going to be in the same sequence. So therefore, there's no way there's going to be an opportunity for them to memorize and go, oh yeah, the last time I took this test, the answer choice was A. Well, now it's probably C or D or F based on the randomizing of the items and questions. So those are things that are built into the platform for you as well. I'm going to close out of the student tracker and stop here for a second to see if there's any questions, because I'm going to need to refresh my screen because my internet is lagging on me. Any questions on anything I've shared so far? Okay, perfect. I'm going to move on to the higher level reporting that's available. So this quick dashboard launch. So your icon here to run report is always going to be the little image. If you click on the quick launch, it's going to take you into the editing or building of the report. And then if you click X, you're going to remove it from your widget. But if this is something that you want favorited and pushed out as a district for different folks to have access to, you can lock it down where it's unremovable. But I'm going to run this report. And this is going to be more of a more comprehensive overall of the entire campus that you can drill down to individual classes and individual students. So the first report that opens up is basically just looking at everything that's been assigned and pushed out within this particular campus. And then we have a district level reporting that operates the same way, and it looks at all campuses and drills all the way down to individual students as well. And again, this one is a bit larger on my slow Wi-Fi. So here we are. It's a drill through report. That's why there are no additional tabs below here. So you'll see that it's grouped by grade level and then subject areas. So if I just drill down on this particular assignment, then it's going to take me down. In this example, I've got the one class and one student. It was a district level assessment that was pushed out to all schools, all students for that grade level and subject area. But then you'll see I've got these reports that I can jump back and forth into from within. So I've got an overall item analysis report that I can look at for this assignment. What I like is the item response distribution report, because what this will do is take a look at how all students across the campus and at the district level across the district answered on the assignments, right? So it lets you really kind of dig into, you know, which kids are struggling on which skills, and is it systemic or is it more isolated to a specific campus or two? So it's really good data to help you plan for do we need to do some in-service with teachers to help them better teach this particular concept and skill because it's such a widespread issue across the district? Or do we need to look at how do we maybe partner more proficient with less proficient teachers? And there's another report that identifies that. It's called the peer-to-peer report. So once this gets loaded, we'll be able to kind of show a couple of those other reports. And I apologize, my internet has been lagging this week on me. Were there any thoughts or questions on the previous reports that I showed that were at the teacher level? Okay. I might have to exit and reload this because of my internet. There we go, it popped up. So now this is basically taking a look at it from a distribution standpoint, so a percentage. So it's taking a look at what were the response choices that were created for this particular assignment, and then gives you those item cards as well, so that you can take a look at and see what was the passage or what was the question stem and answer choices for common errors and misconceptions. But then you can look at it and say, oh, okay, these two skills here, 100% of the students failed to choose the correct response. So let's go in and start, doing some more analytics to dig in and see what's going on there. So that's one of the things that I really love about the item analysis report. And I need to get rid of this thing over here so I can, there we go, let's put it down there. Go back in. So the peer comparison report, this one is what I was mentioning, that it's basically going to group your teachers together on the basis of where they're falling on this assignment for their overall student performance. Another person admitted. And so what it'll do is at the district level, it gives you a great scatter plot, and it shows each class and teacher where they're falling across the scale. But here it's going to give you some groupings to identify, you know, which teachers are meeting and getting the overall number of students there, which students or teachers are struggling, and it'll give you data to maybe think about doing some partnerships, taking more proficient teachers and pairing them with teachers that are struggling, where they can discuss strategies specifically around the skills that were associated with that particular assessment in question. And then it just has the student breakdown, so you have a couple of tabs in there to work with. But you'll see there's a variety. You've got a test summary. You can go in and view the actual test from here. Frequency distribution of raw data and scores. You've got your student score listing as well as a standards mastery listing, and this is going to be looking at things more cumulatively of how many times they've intersected with that skill and where they are towards building of mastery. So these are just great out-of-the-box reports that are available to you guys day one. The second you release an assignment, you can access these and view that data. I'm going to go ahead and close out of these and get back into the tab here. And then if you want to see the district level, we can do that maybe at the end, because it does take a bit to load, because again, it's much more larger amount of data, and with my slow internet, I don't want you guys staring at the spinning wheel of death for too long. But back at the dashboard, just to summarize what we've covered before we kind of advance, if there's only two things that you remember from this training, and that is the support portal and the walk me through, you're going to do just fine in the sense of working with the content in these materials, because it takes you through step by step. Again, everything related to Itematica for building your assessments is going to be through the assessment section. Everything related to the content collections or shareable folders is going to be under curricula. I'm going to go back into the assessment section. I brought up the resource manager and the bringing in of your own content into the platform that could be released and assigned within the test that you create. So when you go to the resource manager and you click on the resource, then it gives you the option to find an existing resource that's already been uploaded in the system, or to create and bring something new in. So if I click on create new, you'll notice here that this format for anything that you're doing, particularly like authoring tests and releasing assignments, is going to follow this format. It's going to take you through each step in this type of organization. So it makes it very simple and easy for you guys to work with. And then again, you'll notice the Resource Manager tab opened up, so I can navigate back to other parts of the platform while still in the middle of doing this, and it'll take me back to wherever it is that I left off. So the first step is going to be, what type of resource am I wanting to bring in? So browse simply allows you to go into anything that's stored on your hard drive of your computer and to upload that in. So that could be video files, that could be audio files, that can be Word, PowerPoint, Excel, PDFs, you know, whatever it is that you want to, you know, drop into the system. Entering of text, this is really where you would kind of come in and bring in, maybe you want to author your own passage. Maybe you've got a passage that happens to be in a Word document, but you want to make it more of a live interactive passage to include with a question or an item. Then you can copy and paste that and drop it in, and it will be done within this section here, this like Word document processor. And then if you want to bring in anything that is going to be tagged as a URL, a specific Khan Academy site, something that you found on YouTube that a teacher maybe was doing a read aloud of a specific title that you want to put in for an accommodation of a student who's on 504 or on an IEP, where, you know, the test needs to be read to them. Now, we do have text-to-speech built into the platform, and I'll highlight that, but you may also want to utilize an option where they can watch a video of a story being read. Maybe that helps the student better than hearing a computer do the reading for them.
Stephen, is there a way that, since they're utilizing it on a district level and you've got multiple campuses with multiple individuals having access, is there a way that they could create like a district storage spot? to where
Yeah,
they,
that's the content collections that we've been talking
Okay.
about. That's building those shareable file folders so that people can go in and access that, more easily and readily to be found. So that's just the step of, bringing in a specific resource or content that you want to drop in. And then one of the things that you absolutely have to do before you can finalize it and release that is you're going to map it to the TEAC, right? So under the standards tab, it's going to give you the option to say, okay, let's add the standard. So if this was maybe a graphic organizer that was being brought in to support, a language arts activity for 4th grade, then you just simply go in. And now, because I've got everything from a nationwide, that's why I got all these additional options in here. But what you will have is the TEAC's selection. That'll be the only option for you to grab. And so this is the 2017 ELAR. And then it opens up where I can kind of go in down here, maybe just grab 4.2, or I can go over here and I can expand on 4.11 and then look at which specific skill was this really being mapped to. And once I check mark that and click add, then what I'm doing is tagging that resource so that it'll help me with a number of things. One, if it's being used within an assessment and they're actually going to answer something that's associated to that, then it can be scored and graded within the platform and reported against. It's also going to become a resource that would be available in that Reteach Enrich Next Step resource section that has been mapped to that TEAC. So if it's something that I want teachers to have access to, by tagging it, that's where it's going to be able to show up in different sections within the platform for multiple use and availability. I'm going to pause for any questions about the resource manager piece. Okay, I'm going to exit out of the resource manager. I'm going to go back up under my assessment section. I'm going to expand on it, and then I'm going to look at the question manager. Now, this is a piece where if you've authored some benchmark assessments that you want to reuse, but you want students to be able to access it remotely online and interact with it in an online interactive format versus simply opening it up as a PDF file or a Word document, then you could go into the question manager section here. Again, find an existing question to edit it, or create a new question from scratch, which might be simply just where you're going to carry over and cut and paste content from a pre-existing assessment. But again, you'll see here those step-by-step pieces broken down here for you. First step naturally is you want to be able to give it a name, right? I'm just generically going in here. Do you want to connect a resource? That's an option, it's not required. So if I don't want to include anything with this other than create the item with the question stem and answer choices, then I bypass 2 and go to 3. And then this is where I would determine what type of response is the student going to have. Is it going to be a select one? Is this going to be an essay item? Select many, short answer, griddable for math. So I've got my various options here. And so just for the purpose of demo, I'm just going to grab select many. And then what's happening here, once I've selected that, then down below here on step 4, this is where I would determine the number of answer response items that the student would have. Like maybe there's going to be 5 different options that I've already previously curated in that document that I'm going to copy and paste in here, or that I'm going to author from scratch. So here within step 3, this is where I would simply copy and paste in that question stem, or I could simply typeset the question stem. You also will notice here that I have this little math equation calculator here. So if I was actually authoring and typesetting for mathematics, then I can bring in the equation formula and typeset it in line with my word problems so it can mirror and look very much like the way it is on STAR. That I also have that for the sciences, for the chemistry types. So I can bring those formulas into my word problems and questions that I'm creating. And then, of course, it operates very much like a Word document does. So you'll see you've got your same things for indenting, paragraph style, fonts, and so forth. But it does allow you also to bring in and add multimedia, right? So the resource section, if I add it as a resource, means that it's going to either add it as a tab on the screen with the student to open up and look at and view or access. If I'm adding a resource type content here, that means it's being embedded within the question. So on the screen where that question prompt is, whatever it is I'm dropping is going to be a part of that image for the student when they log in to view it. Or if you are producing it for a printable, it's going to be on that page with that item. Any questions about that part so far? Because I want to just make sure everyone is clear and understands what I just said. Okay, excellent. So then you'll see down here for the answer choices. So this is where I'm going to simply edit and import those response items for the student. So again, I could copy and paste from another test that I've already created and drop those in. I can typeset them from scratch right here. And I can even use images and graphics if I wanted to drop those in as well through the insert function, if that's going to be a part of the answer choice. I can typeset the answer choices, again, with the math equations or the chemistry equations. So that way, again, I'm trying to create everything to mirror what it's going to appear like for high stakes testing for the students. Cancel that since I'm not actually creating a test. So then you would go in and drop in each of your response types. And then if you have the distractor, like if student answers A, it's because with the way this problem was worded, you know, they didn't understand number sense or order of operations, or they are struggling with inferencing. You can drop that in here, and that's beneficial in the sense that you can come back and within your item analysis views or going back and reviewing their assignments, you can kind of hover over and identify what was the distractor, which kind of helps with that reteaching and intervention tools for teachers. So you can apply those, or you can leave them blank, doesn't interfere with anything. And then again, mapping my content to specific things for sorting and finding. Maybe you're authoring something for a specific group of students who are on a specific accommodation. So then you can select the accommodation tab and then tag it against that particular resource. So that way you could even build a content collection in the system of assessments that are specific for students that are on 504 or specific IEPs. So all of that additional details is down below here. And then of course, mapping it to the standard, just like I was showing with the resource, it's the same process. So we got someone who's dropped out again. And then I can also add other things here, such as keywords to help with like a syntax search for an item, you know, however you want to do that. But that functionality is down below. And then I can save the question, save the item, but saving it, all that does is make it accessible for finding and editing and reviewing. It can't be released until you go up to the status and release it as a finalized item. So anything that's in editing mode is something that you're not ready to put into a test, you're authoring, so maybe you're not finished and you want to go ahead and exit out and save the question down and you're going to come back to it later, you can do that. But once you've put finalized, then that's now for open consumption. And it's going to be finalized and stored within the item bank under what you named it. So if it was a 4th grade ELAR, it's going to be there. It's going to be available under that particular TEAC that you coded it to. And then if you want to go ahead and tag it to a content collection, I'm going to highlight and take you through those steps here in a minute, then you can aggregate those items into that folder, right, into that shareable folder. So creating content from scratch and authoring or curating your own items is a very simple process. Now, the next phase is for us to look at how do I go in and actually build an assessment from the item bank and or from the items that we're uploading as a district and curating. And one of the questions I get often is, can I intermingle items that I'm curating with the item bank? And the answer is absolutely yes. You can create assessments that are even for dual language, where you can say some of the items are going to be in English and some of the items are going to be in Spanish. You know, you could grab items from multiple grade levels into a test. However you want to build it, you're able to curate it. So again, I'm going to be under the assessment tab. And now because I'm going to create a test, I am going to hit Test Manager. We're back at that window that I highlighted earlier on in the session. So this is creating a new assessment. So I'm going to go ahead and click Create New. And then again, you see the step-by-step process laid out with step 1 and taking you through the details. So the first thing naturally that we need to do in building a test is we're going to have to name it, right? Just like creating an item, we've got to designate it. So I'm just going to say test 1, so I'm not going to save this down. But you'll see current status 2. It's in edit because I am in edit mode. The description has the optional term next to it, so you don't have to describe it, but it's just something that helps you, again, if you're doing a syntax search to find something that you've created or an assignment, you can utilize that. The test level is going to default to your user profile. So if you had teachers that were having access to create their own assessments for students, then when they log in, it's going to default to this classroom because I am logged in as at a teacher level in the system. But the drop-down window, you have your district level. So as at central office, you're curating and you're listed as a central office admin. Then when you go here, it's already going to default to district, but you still have the ability to push out and create a test for a specific teacher in a specific classroom. So you could create a campus test and release it out to that campus. But again, the teacher will only have access to classroom unless you designate them as kind of a quasi-admin, and there's someone you leverage for test making and building as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and click district. The system will always default to the mastery threshold of 70 or greater is mastery of the assessment. The response pattern right now defaults to A through E, but if you're wanting to mirror star, then you can just simply select the alternating A through E, F through K. And then from here, that's all you need to do. You just go to the next step. You'll notice here across the top bar, I've got the green dot because that's where I am currently in the test information. When I hit next, it's going to take me here. And as I'm going through the workflow and I go, oh, I want to jump back to something on the selecting of the items. You can just click on any green dot and it jumps you forward and backward, and you don't lose a step with where you were or what you were doing in the previous or next steps there. So that's one of the nice things about the interoperability of the platform. It is designed, and that's actually the term, has interoperable components to where you can function in multiple sections at the same time without losing or having to save down work and then go and navigate away and back. I'm gonna click next step. Oh, I forgot to select my course. So that's one of the nice things too, is you can't navigate to the next step if you haven't completed what you're supposed to do on this screen. So this is, of course, where you select your subject area. So if I'm going to create an assignment and I'm say, I'll just grab mathematics for the example here for building, but yeah, I would just select whatever subject area. So you are going to have access within the platform, language arts, right? Kindergarten through 12th grade content. You're going to have mathematics, kindergarten through high school. So we kind of group the different courses at the high school level. You'll have access to science, 3rd grade and up. And then you'll have social studies content available to you as well. So anything you need to build for measuring is going to be available in here. The bank does have over roughly around 65,000 total items across the grade levels and subject areas. So you've got a lot of content to work with. So we were already clicked on grade 4 mathematics. You'll notice it opened up over here. So now what I want to do is just check mark it and add it to my filtering group, right? So now once I've got that there, you'll see the course is 4th grade. I'm ready to go. I'm going to hit my next step. There we go. So the next step down here is going to be where I'm going to filter through the items and maybe pare it down to the specific TEK or TEKs that I want to work with. So, but just for purposes of showing you the total number of items that are available for 4th grade math, I'm going to go ahead and filter it so it shows, excuse me, by standard, so by the TEK. Up here, anything that's in this window is what we're applying to the search. So as I grab other filters and add, you'll notice them adding across the top here, but it doesn't change anything until I actually hit search for questions. So right now for 4th grade math, I have 2,474 different questions that I could use for building 4th grade math assessments. So you'll see you have a very large repository. And then what I have is for each of those TEKs, I can group them together. Now, the additional numbering on here is just because of Certica, who is the item bank owner. These are coding, that they use in their system. So you're looking at just the part that is referenced for the TEK right over here for 4.2a. What it does give you is the ability to sort and function by question type. So if it's going to be an open-ended, select many, excuse me, you know, you can group those together. You also can see here on your filters on the side, I can choose to go in and say, well, I want to go ahead and filter this down by a specific type of response. Then I would check mark that, add that, and search for questions, and then it'll change the number of items that I have available to me based on the TEKs that have that type of response type. So that's just for your additional filtering type over here to the side. You can also search by levels of difficulty. You see over here in the column, I've got it based off of the levels of difficulty. So you've got a level 1 over here, level 2. You go, you know, it's basically kind of following the DOK leveling of difficulty. So that kind of gives you an idea of what type of question stems students are going to have, and whether you want to have a less difficult to more difficult progression within the assessment that you're building. It allows you to sort that way, and I'll show you how you adjust that within the test as well as we finish creating. And then I can also look at any item that has a Bloom's taxonomy level, and I want to, you know, grab specifically those that are at the analyzing, you know, or creating levels based on how I want this assessment or what I'm trying to measure. So again, I can filter through that information. When it comes to your English language arts reading, you can also go in and search by passages. So if there's a specific title that is a story that includes the, for that particular TEK. Now I'm in math, so we really don't have any math passages. The reason why this one is here is I authored a passage in the system and uploaded it. So that is one that I created just as an example of something. So you may have some math passages that, you know, you're creating this maybe more as an enrichment assignment, and you want them to be able to read that passage and then answer questions associated or respond to that text, whether it's in math or any subject area. You can do that. That's a part of that authoring, curating, and resource process. I'm going to close there. And then also you've got your complete standards listing here. So if I wanted to go in and view, you know, all the standards and look at based off of the particular TEK and review the description and expectation, and then how many items do we have in the system associated, I simply just open that up and view all, and you'll see the number of items that are associated with this particular TEK. So like there's 230 items specific to 4.2b. So obviously it's an item that is widely used and needed, 104 here. And then you've got some that, you know, maybe are as little as 8 and 6 on this. So this gives you a good idea of as you're curating the content, storing things for content collections, these are ways to go in and grab and identify those items. I'm going to X out of this. Okay, just to review before I move forward. I'm in the test manager. I've determined the grade level, subject area. I've given it a name and a designation. And now I've moved to the point of searching for specific questions. I've searched for just everything that's at the 4th grade, but now I want to take a look at something that's maybe specific to a specific TEK that I'm building this assignment off of. So I'm just grabbing 4.2a. I'm going to go ahead and view all on that. And I want to go ahead and add that to my search, right? So when I click there, you'll notice nothing changed down here because, again, I have to search for those questions to filter. So all I did was add it to my filter. I have not added it to my search. Now, the reason I highlight that and make that comment is a lot of the initial questions that came from our customers after, you know, they got started on their own is like, hey, this thing isn't doing, you know, what you guys trained me to do. I'm going in and adding things, but I'm not getting any content. And it's because they're forgetting this one step, which is you need to apply what you've put into the filters. So that's one thing you always need to remember is if something's not happening, double check, did you actually apply it to your search? So you'll notice the 2,000 questions that were here before are now down to the 6 for that question type that I grabbed. And so now I have these 6 items that I can take a look at and determine whether I want to include them into my particular test that I'm building. So to preview these items, you've got your details section with the little plus sign. I simply expand on that plus sign, and it's going to open up the question stem and the answer choices. It's going to, you know, remind me of the TEK that I'm looking at. And then if there's information about Bloom's, it's going to be here. So this is at the applying level. And then you do have the ability to go in and rate items. So that way you can, as you're looking or searching for items based off of those that you've curated or already previewed and know these are good items that you want to use or grab for content collections, that's there as well. You can preview it in a printable view as well. So any item, if you're building the test for it being printed out, you can go ahead and preview that here, and it'll just simply open up like that item card view that I showed you in the item analysis view. This is math, so it's just basically going to open this up in a preview because there's no other text associated. If it was an ELAR, then it would open up the text that this item was attached to, and then the question stem, just like the item card example from the item analysis. So let's say you're looking at this and you go, you know, this is great. However, looking at the latest STAR release for this particular teak, they're supposed to have something italicized or something needs to be underlined or highlighted or the wording needs to be modified slightly. You can do that. So from right here, I can click on the hyperlink for this item, and then that's going to take me into the question manager with this item. So just like how I showed you authoring your own content from scratch, this is now editing an existing item to be modified and used on what you're going to release as a test. We have that negotiated with our contract with Certica and their Navigate Item Bank, which is where these items are coming from, because of the fact that we have the authoring tool. So any item that you edit and save down, let's say a year from now or 2 years from now, you guys choose to go with a different provider. Those items, even though you edited them, still belong to Certica. So they're not something you're going to get. But if you created content from scratch, and any of the stuff that you've previously made and uploaded and all that, that's your intellectual property. And so if you do at some point choose to move to a different provider, that content will be transferred over and provided to you to be utilized in that other resource. And I just want to make sure you understand the difference between editing an item and that is owned through Certica and creating your own items from scratch. Because once you've authored it, it's yours. If you've edited it, it's still the original ownership of the item bank. So again, I'm here in the question manager. You'll see that question stem that was already authored in the item. I can simply go in and edit that information and modify that, but I can't do anything until I copy this, right? So you'll notice that the little word tools and stuff aren't here because it's still under the same naming convention and this is locked down. You can't, so that way the original item is always going to be available. So you'll see up here, I have the ability to create a new question or copy. And so what I'm going to do is copy this question. And then once the system opens up, oh, I had an error pop up on my demo account. Sorry. Let me close out of that. I'll probably have to refresh. But basically, you get the gist. Once I copy it, it's going to say copy of cert 18 with this number. And then I can just change the name. And then it's going to open up my editing tools. And I can go in and make the changes that I want to make. And that includes maybe it's not the question that you want to change. Maybe you don't like some of the answer choices or you want to modify the answer choices because maybe this is an item you previously used and you want to use it again on a new assessment, but you don't want it to be exactly organized the same way so that a student can't go, oh, I remember taking this before and the answer was A. You can reorder and modify or edit the answer responses as well. So
Stephen, there's a question in the chat.
Yes.
If we edit an item, does it change for everyone or just the test we are creating? And I was wondering if maybe we can give everybody a 2-minute bathroom break.
Absolutely. So let me answer that question, and then we'll take a quick break so everyone can get level set. So no, when you modify the item, you're modifying that at the item level, not necessarily at the test level, and then you're saving the original item is still going to be in the bank. And then this is going to be stored in that bank as well under the new name, but everyone will have access to it and can utilize it. Now, if it's already like you're editing an existing test and that test has already been released, then it's not going to allow you to edit the item based off of tests that haven't been graded yet. So that's where the limitation in the sense that you don't want to modify an item that's already been embedded into a test that's been released and assigned to students. But you could rename that test, right, and make those changes, and that's really what it is becoming a different test. I hope that answered the question. Okay.
Yes,
Let's
it
go ahead and
does.
okay, let's take our biological break here. My clock reads 9:34. So let's come back, say in like 3 minutes, if that's enough for everybody.
Why don't we give them 5 minutes? That way, if they want to, they can also refresh their coffee or something. So
All right, so
say at
9:40, let's come back at 9:40.
9:40. Okay.
Okay, do we have everybody back? Ms. Shields, I will pause until you give me the green light to go.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like, if not, they're coming.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and resume. All right, so we left off on editing an item from the item bank. So just to recap, you are able to link directly to it from your preview mode. You always have to copy. So you come up here to your tools where you would go ahead and copy the item, rename that item. Now, you'll probably want to come up with a naming convention as a district for that. If you do go in and edit an item and save it down, that everyone's kind of following the similar way that you're naming and identifying. So that way it's easy for you guys to find those items and drop them into your content collections, or simply find them and add them to assessments directly from the bank. But we'll leave that up to you as to how you want to determine how you would name an item. The item card here is where you also can rate that item that you've been created. So, you know, the rating system is there for you. The ability to edit the answer selections is a part of it as well. So if you wanted to simply modify those items and change the order sequence, you can do that as well. And then you could go ahead and add additional information that maybe is not already identified back to that accommodations or content attributions. You'll see the test tool function is here. You can embed that when this item is released, this particular test tool is always available. But there's different ways in the system to do that as well. Like when you're releasing the completed test, to where that capability is as a part of the test. Versus just associated with an individual item. But it does give you the capability to go ahead and identify that this item is always going to have text to speech, because maybe you were building this particular item as a 504. But typically you don't want to limit your items to just that. You want to author it, and then you can add the accommodations later or during the time of releasing an assignment. So once I've made the changes that I want and save this down, then what's going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and close out of the test question manager and go back to the test manager. Then what I would need to do, since I was doing it from this filter, is I would need to refresh and then go back and refilter, because I'm still in the original item, but I want to use that item as to what I'm building. So I can either go ahead and do the refreshing, go back in and refilter and pull it in, or I can wait until I complete the assignment, and then I can go back in and add that afterwards, right? So I can go back in and add those edited items after I've gone ahead and just dropped in the ones that I've chosen. So I'm going to minimize the preview here, go back to my list, and let's say I've identified these three as being ones that I want to utilize on my building of my assignment. I can go ahead and hit add questions here. And if I'm not wanting to go find other questions before going to the next step, I would need to do this, so that way I could go back in and do more filtering and grab more items. Or if these are the only three that I'm choosing to use, then what I could do is just go right to my next steps, and it's going to automatically grab and add those items. There's always going to ask you, are you sure you want to navigate away before you do, so that way you don't lose anything that you've saved, because when you navigate out, you could lose those items. So you'll see that nav bar across the top again. I'm now in the order point allocation step of building out this test. I could jump back to change the name of the test by clicking on test information. I could go back and say, no, I want to select some other questions or add. So I would click there, that'll take me back to that previous screen, and then I can filter and grab new content. But right now at this step, what it's wanting me to do is determine, is this the sequence in which I want the items? What specific weighted value do I want it to be graded against for each item? And then you have the ability to filter and add in your level of difficulty and blooms, just so you can see, Like right now, it's starting out with level two questions and finishing with a level 1. Well, I don't like that sequence. I want to grab the level 1 and bring it up to be the first. And so now I can order that progression of the thought that the student's going to have to follow. I could also do it based off of the blooms, whether or not I want to have, this is a pretty good sequence, except I would probably bring this one up next, so I'd have 2 understanding and then finish with applying. But it allows you to make those changes. I also can go back in and preview the detail of the item if I forgot from here, so I can expand the card. And then if it's something I didn't really want, I can delete it from here and go back and select different questions, right? So again, I've got that quick, easy back and forth navigation. So from a weighted distribution, I can say this test is going to be worth 100 points. I'm simply going to just distribute the points equally across the items. Or I can manually go in and modify and say this particular item is going to be maybe a bonus item, and I'm going to give a different value. So you can apply those points. You can preview the test right here, right? So in other words, you can take a look at it and see what it's going to look like for the student in the online version, which is what's displaying right now, is the items that I grabbed and the way that they're going to show to the student as they go through. And you'll notice I grabbed Spanish items because I didn't filter my list based off of English only. So I ended up grabbing some Spanish items. But then you'll also see that I can preview it in the printable version. And so one of the nice things about Itematica and our platform is with that interoperability capabilities is any item and or assessment that you're building, it's going to always create it in both formats. So that way you can release it in both ways. But so I'm going to admit someone else in. So this is just giving you the example of the printable version that you're going to produce in a booklet form for the students to take pen and paper. And then, of course, the online, if the student's going to log in and access it and consume it online. And then you'll notice here, too, all the accommodation tools, test-taking tools. They're grayed out right now because they haven't been turned on. I haven't released this. I'm not logged in as a student. But if I enabled specific test tools, then the student will be able to access those. So we do have a graphing calculator, scientific calculator, and then your basic calculator, but also protractor ruler. And then text-to-speech is built in. And then this is always turned on for student use, which is magnification, so they can increase the font size for your seeing impaired students. And then for students that are dyslexic or on the autism scale, they have access to the contrasting to change the overlay. So that way it'll help them focus better. And they can self-select the overlay that best meets their concentration style. So just to highlight that, to know that that's in there and a part of the accommodations for the students. And so if everything looks good and I'm happy with the test, I'm going to just exit out of this, and then I'm going to move to the next step of the progression. So I was going to ask, are you sure? And so this is just a little temporary stop. So we showed at the very beginning, the mastery threshold is 70%. So this is just giving you the option if for this assignment, you want to give a different cut score, you can make those changes here. So this might be as an example, if this was not being used as a true summative or even formative assessment, that it was going to be an assignment for daily work and a daily grade, and we grade daily work at a 60% cut score, then you can make that modification here and apply it. And then you could also change, where the performance bands are set, turn on or off. That's your option here. But basically, everything is defaulted to where it needs to be. You don't have to make any changes here. It's just a stop on the path in the event that you want to or need to. So I'm going to click the next step. Again, always going to ask me if I'm sure. And then at this point, I'm basically ready to go. I can either go ahead and finalize the test and then go into the releasing functions, or I can say, you know what, I want to view the answer key real quick. So I click on the answer key. It's going to open it up. It's going to, let me know what's here and available for it. I could print this off for myself if I wanted to. But if the student is completing the work in the system online, it's going to be graded, and you don't have to worry about the answer key, especially if it's select response, select one, select many, and short answer response. The system will grade automatically. It's your essay and your open response items that the teacher will have to go in and grade in the system. But then if you're releasing this assessment to be done booklet, pen and paper, then you do have the ability to release a pre-slug scan sheets. so that you can then, students can enter their responses on the scan sheet, and then that can be easily scanned into the system for grading. You also have the ability to generate or release a quick answer key. So like if I go back to this section here, and I go back to the preview, you'll notice this tab that I didn't click on earlier, which is the bubble sheet view. So it also creates a quick answer key option as well. So you could release a quick answer key. So students are going to log into their device, but they're going to have the assessment in paper form, and then they can input their responses online and submit. So that way, again, it can be auto-graded, and you don't have to deal with scanning in and collecting work. So you have those multiple options for getting the data imported into the system and for grading purposes. I'm going to close out of this again. And I don't need the print sheet. And again, I can just jump back to where I last was. And then at this point, when I go in to finalize the test, I'll go ahead and finalize it. I'll just go back in and delete this later so it's not caught up in my thing. You'll see here now it says, do I want to create the printable? Do I want to release the test? Right? Or do I want to generate pre-slug scan sheets? So I can go in and create those right here very easily. I can go right into release the test. I can preview the online version again if I need to go back. I can go back and edit from here, and then you got your previous stop. When I go into release this—
Stephen, we have a quick question.
Yes.
We have a quick question. Text-to-speech is not available in Spanish, correct?
Correct. It is not available in Spanish at this time. We are looking for a plugin that does read in Spanish. We haven't found the appropriate one yet, so we are looking to add that feature into the system. But I couldn't tell you when that's going to happen. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, great. So again, we're going to have great help functions here. So you need help assigning, you can click on that. It kind of serves as a walk me through. It's just embedded within this section to take you through the steps, or you can open up walk me to assign, excuse me, and then it'll highlight and take you through the steps as well. But for releasing the test, you'll see it's got the same kind of easy steps to follow like what we were doing on the resource manager and the item manager. The first step here is, what are the details? You've got secured assessment. So this is locking the student down when they launch the assessment on their device, where they can't navigate away to the internet onto other sites. So that way they're secured within the assignment and can't do that. Randomized question answers. This is what I had mentioned a few times earlier. So maybe you're going back to an assessment that and editing, and maybe the only editing you're going to do is now randomize the choices to re-release it for a second administration of the test to a same group of students. So you can go ahead and do that. Hiding the summary is basically saying we don't want the students to see how they performed after they submit. They're just going to go back to their portal and go on to the next activity or assignment. They don't have the ability to see how they did. Or you can do show answer choices after submission, and this is where after they complete, they cannot make any changes to the test, but they can look at it item for item and to see whether they got it right or wrong. And for their own self-edification, but again, they can't retake the test. They can't go in and modify and change because it's been submitted, but they can preview. But you do have to enable that for them to see. So you've got that functionality to set. This is a part where you could go in and set the accommodations by adding text to speech if you want to make it for
another
all.
question.
Yes.
Another question. Are the ELAR passages in English and Spanish the same?
So yes, from the titles that have both English and Spanish versions, they are transadapted and translated from the English. So they are the same passages. Any other questions before I move on? Okay. So if you've got assessments that you're creating and you've got different students that are on 504s, but you don't necessarily know out of the gate as you're releasing it who is and isn't, there is a way to make the system do that automatic for you. So I'm going to jump out of the test manager and we can come right back to where we left off. But I want to go back to my home page where I can go to my sections. And so if I go to that student tracking that I was in earlier, you'll see this tab up here that says accommodations. So you can do this, at the district level, with the master roster, but we can go in under the sections here and then simply for every student that needs to be utilizing text to speech because it's a part of their 504 plan or their IEP, if you check mark them because their student number is associated with them for anything you release to them, the system will recognize the text to speech is supposed to be enabled and will turn it on just for those students so you don't have to worry about going back and releasing an assignment for just my 504s and then go back and re-release the same assignment for those students who don't need text to speech. You can get them locked into the system to where that's ready to go. And that's here at the student tracking at the accommodations tab. And you see here, you've got some other tabs for doing various things like accessing the students' passwords so that if they forgot, you can print out that list. And if you need to add just a new student jumped in and you don't want to wait for the Skyward to update yet, you can go ahead and add them, and get them in there, or you're just moving them from one class or group or something. So that capability is there. I'm going to close out because I don't need this anymore.
So Stephen, Skyward automatically assigns students to their particular campus, et cetera?
Yep. Yeah, it's the student information system. So it's what tracks students as they move from campus to campus, classroom to classroom. Their data follows them within the district.
Thank you. Okay,
so test taking tools again, straightforward. I can turn them all on, turn them all off as I'm releasing it. Let the accommodation tab deal with the students that need it. The step 3 is a required step in that you do need to determine, am I releasing this today to be used today, right? I got to select an end date, or am I creating this for a future assessment? So is this I'm creating for the second 6 weeks or the third 6 weeks? Well, I can go in and set the date as to when it's going to be accessible. Like, so in other words, until we get to, November, whatever, this is not going to be able to be released to the students. And what window of time are we giving teachers to have their students log in and or distribute the assessments and get every student tested? Then that determines the date and when this is no longer going to be viable in an online use, right? Because I've scheduled this to be released online and they only get these 2 days to get everyone logged in and completing of that assessment, or this 1 day, however you want to filter it and set it. So you've got it, but you do have to pick a time. And then you can even set the specific time of day that this is going to be available. So in other words, if on Tuesday, the 21st, testing is scheduled for 2 p.m., then this doesn't become available until, 1:55 or however you want to set it. And then I can end the time that it's going to be available. But I can also make it where I can just leave this open and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to turn it into a time test. So it's available on this day that I've set to release, but they're only going to get however long I set. So I turn this to a time test from the little filter option here. How much time am I going to give them, right? Do it in minutes or hours, however, the test is formatted. And then you can also create a little display warning that will pop up on their screen. And let's say you want to give them a 5-minute warning. Then 5 minutes before that end time that's selected for that 1 hour or whatever length they had will pop up on their screen, and they'll know, oh, I've got 5 minutes to get this done, and they can finish it out. The 4th step is another optional step when it comes to releasing. This is just where, as a student logs in and opens up and launches this assignment or this assessment, this instruction is a window that will pop up before they can access the content. So this is where you have the ability to, give some written instructions about, the process of the test, informing them that it's a time test. This is also where you could simply put a statement in there saying, hey, do your best work, you'll do great. You give them, attaboy, attagirl type messaging. This is also where if you're releasing this out and it's not something you're using as a specific assessment, maybe you're generating an assignment for them to complete work, or it's a practice test, and you want to include some instructional supports. So then this is where you could go ahead and embed a video. So maybe or a teacher in the district has modeled the process of whatever this test is going to be covering. You can embed that video, so when they launch the assignment, the first thing they see is your instructions, and they can play the video that's being modeled. Or you can attach other instructional tools or resources that you want, audio files, graphic organizers, whatever. This is where you would do that step. If you hadn't already included the resource within the item itself, now you're attaching it and including it with the assessment itself. Any questions about that piece that I just highlighted? Okay, great. So again, as a reminder, if you've already identified students in the student tracker under the accommodations, text-to-speech, that will be enabled and automatic. If not, you would need to enable it at the time you release it. If you release this test and you forgot, then you would go back to the assessment manager, test manager, find and edit, or you could go back to your home page, go back to your student tracker, and then you'll see that test that you've released already. It's going to be displayed up here. You could click on that assessment, takes you back into your assignment manager, and you can go in and edit details. That'll allow you to change what you forgot to do before releasing it, go back in and turn on an accommodation, things of that nature. So I just want to remind you. Yes.
We have 3 different questions. If 2 instructional coaches have access to the same students and one turns on the text-to-speech, does it affect the other instructional coaches' testing accommodations as well?
Well, so if you are releasing a test to a student, but you have 2 different things, because it's being released with the assignment itself. So if you are assigning different tests to the same student and one turned on text-to-speech, then no, the other test, coach released a test that wasn't enabled, then it wouldn't turn it on for them, unless that tab is turned on.
The question though is to the same student. So my guess would be if you have 2 coaches on one campus and they're both creating something, does it then read it by teacher login, I guess, would make sense?
Yeah, so, I mean, you've got 2 coaches releasing something to the same student.
On the same campus.
Yeah, on the same campus, but you're not releasing the exact same test, right?
Correct.
So therefore, when you released it and you enabled it for that student, for that test, it's only enabled for that student for that test. It's at the assignment level.
Okay, so she's asking then, in other words, you have to turn on accommodations for every test created?
No, so if you've set the student to the accommodation at the student tracker to have, because they're on a 504 or an IEP, and you've enabled that, the system will automatically, for any coach who's administering any, releasing any assessment to a student or to that student, the system's going to automatically turn on text-to-speech for them because that's a part of their 504. If this student is not requiring an accommodation, then you have the option to turn on or off text-to-speech at the releasing of the assignment level. So,
okay, so the way I understand her question, and I'll try to answer it, would be yes, every single test that you create, you have to go in and turn on the accommodations because every test may have different accommodations that are necessary. So my understanding of the system is as you create a test, you do have to turn on the different accommodations. Correct?
Only if you want to enable that, and that's on the basis of the student, not the test, right? So,
yeah, I think the question is asking is if you turn on a text-to-speech accommodation for a student, is every assignment that's pushed out by every coach applied to that child?
Yes, it's based on his
Okay.
student ID, his or her student ID.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
And then there's another accommodations question is if the student has an accommodation in one subject but not another, is it subject specific or? I don't think so, right?
Well, text-to-speech is an accommodation that covers all subjects with regards to 504 or IEP. The other like test-taking tools such as calculators and things of that nature, that's not pre-configured in our accommodations tab to be automated. Those are things that you would do as you are creating or releasing a test. So for this particular test that I'm creating, if I want every student to have text-to-speech, then I turn it on here and every student will have it. If I don't want every student, and I don't want even my 504 to have it, which I don't know why you wouldn't, you know, I would have to turn it on or off here. So if I want the protractor available, I have to turn it on at the time that I'm releasing this. But I'm releasing it ahead of schedule, and I can go back in and edit anytime as well, because I'm building this as a benchmark or an assessment for the future use. All I'm doing is creating it and then releasing it and saving it, and then I can go back in and manage it however I want to before it finally is accessible for students.
Okay, and I'm not sure if this question was asked out loud. Forgive me if it was. Can district people see pending and active tests to assist with issues like incorrect dates, naming protocol, or whatever?
Yes, so you know, your admins will have all access, so they could go in and take a look at what's out there and go, and that's also in your reporting, and it's also something that would be a part of. We've got another widget that is going to be available. We haven't released it yet in the system, which is exactly that. It's your assignments, your pending assignments, what's out there, and what's been completed and what's still pending. So it'll be a widget like this one that says need grading, but it's going to be associated to those assignments that are out and still needing to be completed, and those that have been recently completed. There's a third widget that also has, it's going to identify the TEKs that students are performing really well in, and then the TEKs that are underperforming as a widget as well. So you have the ability to, you know, look at that for quick reference, going, oh, we got to go back and address these TEKs. So those are some new widgets that are going to be released in the upcoming weeks.
Okay, nice. And then there's one more question that I see is, do you know if the graphing calculator is TI-84 or T184, sorry, or TI Inspire?
It's self-author. It's a calculator that our tech team has created. So I don't have the exact answer to that, but make a note of that question. We'll have to pose to the tech team what was the inspiration behind the graphing calculator, and then we can then share that out in an email.
Okay, I think that's all we've, yeah, I think that's all we've got for now. Thank you.
No, the last one was, I don't think we answered this. If accommodations are student specific, can they also be content specific?
No, I mean, the accommodation tab is accommodating the student at their student ID level. So that crosses all subject areas.
Okay, so I don't think it's then content specific. It's really more for the student.
Yeah, it is, because a student, if you're putting a student on a text-to-speech accommodation, that's because they are on a written plan, 504 or IEP, that requires it. And this just saves you the step of having to go back in and modify and change when you release. As you create an assessment and you don't want students on those accommodations automatically, you could go in and take them off that text-to-speech accommodation and then turn it on and off based off of what subject area. So, but just to make sure everyone is clear, if I check mark a student in the student tracker under the accommodations tab, what I am doing is telling the system every assignment that gets released for that child, text to speech is always going to automatically be enabled. Okay, any other questions in there before we advance?
Yes. So instructional coaches create tests and add accommodations. Teachers will not have access to add accommodations. Both questions.
Correct. If you're not giving teacher access to the platform and you're just pushing it out and doing all the releasing as a coach or at the central admin for district-wide release, the teachers really have no involvement other than proctoring the students if they're doing the work in class, or if it's remotely, then they're you know, just
I don't
I'll jump in here. Like, y'all have all these questions about accommodations, but that's probably going to be something that Valerie Tafoya and Dr. Cadillo and I have to collaborate on and figure out the best way to approach that. You know, and then we also have to go in and make sure that, you know, we know, you know, the correct accommodations for kids. So you know, with this new platform, I think, you know, there's some work we're going to have to think about the accommodations and, you know, what's the best way to approach that. Because we don't want to have people have to go in and individually code all the SPED kids every single time for what accommodations they're going to get. So let us work on that.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
So when it comes to the releasing, the final steps here, right, in this function, because we've already authored, we're just releasing this assignment, accommodations aside, then if you're releasing as a coach, right, you've got your name will be listed here because of your login ID. And then when you click apply filters, then what's going to be available to you is your campus and all of your teachers by classroom. So in other words, if you want to release this to a specific class, then you can simply click on that teacher in their class, and this is going to be released only to them. If you want to release it, campus-wide, then you have your campus listed would be the first listing you have, which would be your school, and that means you're releasing this based on the test, right, which was a 4th grade ELA test, and it's going to be released to your 4th grade ELA teachers. So you'll have your grade level or subject area sections, and it's just a matter of check marking to whom which it's being released to, right, for this test. And then ultimately you would go down and click release test. And then this will give you a check mark saying successfully released. Do you want to release it to others? It won't navigate away from the screen in the event that maybe you want to go back and then say, oh, I do want to release it to this particular group of students. This would be something that would be more at the individual campus level and something more of an individual teacher might do. But let's say you've got kiddos that are in the RTI program and you're creating this as something for RTI, then you could have that group of students listed under the RTI designation here, and then you would filter and add them to the group and then check mark them and then release for them. So gives you that ability to multi-release or just say this is something I'm singularly releasing. You could even get to the point where if you wanted to release something to an individual student, then you could grab the class and then you go into the roster and then you say this is being released for Jane Doe. So that's what these blue filters on the side over here allows you to go down to the micro level. Over here, you're at more of the macro, campus-wide for ELA, grade 4, then you just check mark and apply and you're good to go. Any questions about that? Okay, I'm going to close out of my test manager because that's everything as it relates to creating and simply releasing an assignment. The next thing I want to go to is your content collections.
Stephen, we're coming up on 10:15. I think they need to jump off by 10:30. I think that's correct, Amy.
Yeah, this is the last piece. So I just wanted, because you guys talked very early on about shareable files and stuff. So your content collections for creating is, you can go right to your WalkMe and it'll take you straight through. So like I said, it's under curriculum. Then it's going to take you to click on the collections. And then do I want to find and edit an existing one, or am I creating from scratch? So I happen to be doing that. And so again, it will take you through every step of what you need to do to build that shareable folder. So it's very straightforward and simple. You name it, you add your members, you tag the content that you want to drop in, and you save it down. So you can build as many content collections as you want. And you also can create and make private non-shareable files as well. If there's certain things that you want to create as a reserve of items that is strictly for the central office, and then you can create items that are accessible at the campus levels, and then you can even create a reserve of items that you're going to give teachers access to use for practice. So the content collection piece is very simple and straightforward. The very last thing I want to highlight for you is this My Publish queue. This is basically if you want to grab a team of people to build assessments and you want some people to have read only and can give notes, or you have edit rights where they can go in and make changes. So this is where you might build a queue of people who are saying your role is to specifically check for vocabulary and make sure that we're on point. Your role is to check on the illustrations and make sure the illustrations are proper. So that's what you're doing, is building a publishing queue to then create assessments that you drop into collections that are ready for release for teachers. So that's what this queue is here for. Any questions before we end? Because that's really the final piece of it for utilizing Itematica and creating resources, curating your own items, utilizing the item bank, creating an assessment, and releasing the assessment.
So guys, I'm going to remind you that the intent of this is for us to have access to a test bank that teachers do not have access to, so that we can create assessments. One of the, as you guys know, and then I'm telling you new ones, the problem that we would continually run into in sharing the test banks in Eduphoria is that it didn't necessarily, if we thought we were putting something on a district assessment and then, teachers are like, well, I've already used that, so we would get that a lot. So we wanted a test bank that we could exclusively use. And then also it's about this platform and the beauty of the platform and the kids being able to test on it, online and with these accommodations. But we're in the process of getting everything rostered, and then we'll have to work through permissions and who has permissions to what, and then we'll have to get probably Dr. Carrillo and Valerie and I will have to get with Julie Silva and talk about the accommodation piece and what is the best way to approach that. So we'll do that, and then we can have some sessions where we work together, to try to build some assessments, do some trial runs.
Yeah, and I just wanted to show you and highlight for what you see, like when you release the assessment, that the student simply, when they log in, they'll see it highlighted under their class and teacher or section subject area, and they click on it, and then it opens up the assignments for them, and then they simply click on the assignment and launch it. And then it's very similar to the visibility that you saw in the preview. This is just giving an example where it was released with a video and some instructions that they could watch beforehand. That's that instruction step 4. And then here's the test that was released with the passage and then the answer choices with their accommodations turned on. So that's what the remote access would be for students. All right, any other questions that I can address while we have you for a few more minutes? I know you probably want to have a break and freshen up before you jump into your 10:30 session, but I do want to make sure that I'm here to answer questions.
Stephen, I'll make a quick overall. So if anybody is wondering, I know that you recorded this, and I'm sure that people are going to want to look back at things. I'm getting a couple of heads going, yeah. So thank you, Ms. Rondon. I'm believing you're going to create it on a YouTube channel. Is that right?
Yeah, so because it's too large to email directly out. So once I hit stop recording, it's going to take probably about 45 minutes to actually turn into an MP4 file. And then I will load it up onto my YouTube channel where I have different trainings that I've done. And I'll send out the link to you, Matt and Renee, to distribute.
Okay. If y'all have a piece of paper and a pencil, my local email is Matt, M-A-T-T, at mentoringminds.com. And you're welcome to reach out with questions, comments, concerns. So if there's no other questions with anybody, I'll give it about 10 seconds you can throw in a quick question. And if not, we'll go ahead and log off.
Thanks, everyone.